The research station on Kepler 442b looked like a small city made of metal and glass. Dr. Elena Martinez walked through the main corridor, checking her daily reports. She had been the chief scientist here for 3 years, and every day brought new discoveries about the strange crystal formations on this distant planet. Elena loved her work. The planet was beautiful in a weird way. Purple crystals grew everywhere, some as tall as buildings. They seemed to sing when the wind hit them, creating music that no human had ever heard before. Her team of 800 scientists studied these crystals every day, trying to understand how they worked. But today felt different. Elena stopped at the main window and looked outside. The purple crystals were moving. They had never moved before. She called her assistant, Dr. Kevin Stone, over to look. "Kevin, look at Sector 7. Are those crystals moving?" Elena asked. Kevin looked through his binoculars. His face went pale. "Elena, they're not just moving. They're growing fast." Elena grabbed her radio. "All teams return to base immediately. Something is wrong with the crystals." Within an hour, all the scientists were back at the station. Elena called an emergency meeting in the main hall. Everyone looked worried. The station security chief, Captain Rick Barnes, stood next to Elena as she spoke. "The crystals are behaving strangely. We need to run full scans and figure out what's happening. Until then, nobody leaves the station," Elena announced. Dr. Lisa Hayes, the station's geologist, raised her hand. "Elena, I've been studying these crystals for 2 years. They've never done anything like this. It's like they're responding to something." "Responding to what?" Elena asked. "I don't know, but the energy readings are off the charts. Something is making them active." Captain Barnes stepped forward. "I'm putting the station on alert. Everyone needs to stay calm, but be ready to move fast if needed." Over the next few days, things got worse. The crystals kept growing and moving. They started making new sounds, not the beautiful music from before, but harsh noises that hurt people's ears. Some crystals began to glow with a strange light that made people feel sick when they looked at it. Elena tried to contact Earth every day, but the messages were taking longer to send. The crystals seemed to be interfering with their communications somehow. Finally, she managed to send a short message to the Galactic Council, the group of alien races that kept peace in the galaxy. "This is Research Station Kepler 442b. We're having problems with the local crystal formations. They're exhibiting unknown behavior. Requesting advice or assistance." The reply came back 3 days later. It was short and cold. "Station Kepler 442b, your situation has been noted. A quarantine beacon will be placed around your system. No ships are authorized to enter. Galactic Council out." Elena stared at the message. "They're abandoning us," she said to Kevin. "What do you mean?" Kevin asked. "They're not sending help. They're just going to block off the whole system and let whatever happens to us happen." Captain Barnes was angry. "Those alien jerks can't just leave us here to die." Elena thought about the backup communication system that Earth had installed secretly. The aliens didn't know about it. She could send a message directly to Earth, but it would take everything the system had. That night, the crystals did something new. They started combining with each other, forming bigger and bigger structures. Some of them began to look almost like buildings or machines. Dr. Hayes ran more scans and found something terrifying. "Elena, these things aren't just crystals. They're some kind of technology, and they're not from our dimension. They exist partially in our space and partially somewhere else." "What does that mean?" Elena asked. "It means they can do things that should be impossible. They can appear and disappear. They can pass through solid matter. They're like ghosts, but real." Elena made her decision. She activated the secret communication system and sent a message to Earth. "Earth, this is Elena Martinez at Kepler 442b. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. We're dealing with extra-dimensional entities. They're not from our reality. They're spreading and growing stronger. We need help now." The next day, things got much worse. The crystal entities, as Elena now called them, began moving toward the station. They didn't walk or roll. They just appeared closer each time anyone looked away. Captain Barnes and his security team tried to set up defenses, but their weapons passed right through the creatures. Elena sent another message to Earth. "They're at our walls now. Our weapons don't work. They exist partially outside our dimension. These things are like nothing we've ever seen. If they get into normal space completely, they could spread anywhere. God help us all." The station's power began to fail as the entities got closer. The crystals were draining energy from everything around them. Elena gathered everyone in the quantum-shielded safe room that Dr. Stone had built for emergencies. It was designed to protect against radiation, but Elena hoped it might also protect against dimensional effects. "How long can we last in here?" Captain Barnes asked. "Maybe a week with the emergency power," Elena replied. Outside, they could hear the entities moving through the station. The sounds were terrible, like metal being twisted and reality being torn apart. Elena tried the communication system one more time, but it was dead. Elena looked around the safe room at her team. 43 people, some of the smartest humans alive, trapped on a distant planet with creatures from another dimension. The Galactic Council had written them off as another failed colony. But Elena knew something the aliens didn't. Humans didn't give up easily. Somewhere back on Earth, people would be reading her messages. And if she knew humans, they wouldn't just accept the loss of 800 people. They would do something about it. She just hoped they would do it fast enough. As Elena tried to sleep that first night in the safe room, she could hear the entities moving around outside. They seemed to be studying the station, learning about human technology. That worried her more than anything else. These creatures weren't just spreading randomly. They were intelligent. They were learning. And they were getting ready for something bigger. Admiral Jack Morrison sat in his office on Earth, staring at Elena Martinez's message for the 10th time. The words made his blood run cold. Extra-dimensional entities, the Galactic Council's abandonment of human colonists. This was exactly the kind of scenario that had kept him awake for 20 years. Morrison had spent his entire career preparing for threats that most people thought were impossible. While other officers focused on normal space battles, Morrison studied reports about strange disappearances and unexplained phenomena. He had built his career on being ready for the unthinkable. He pressed a button on his desk. "Get me the president. Tell him it's priority alpha." Within minutes, Morrison was in a secure video call with President Sarah Williams and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The president looked tired. She had been dealing with trade disputes with alien governments all week. "What's the situation, Admiral?" President Williams asked. "Ma'am, we have 800 civilians trapped on Kepler 442b with hostile extra-dimensional entities. The Galactic Council has quarantined the system and refuses to help. I'm requesting permission to activate Operation Homecoming." General Mike Foster, head of the Army, leaned forward. "Operation Homecoming?" "Jack, that's for species extinction scenarios." "Yes, sir. And that's exactly what we're facing. These entities aren't just threatening our colony. According to Dr. Martinez, they could spread anywhere if they fully enter our dimension." President Williams was quiet for a moment. "How many ships can you gather?" "More than the aliens know we have, ma'am." Morrison sent out the recall codes within the hour. Every human ship in space, from the largest military vessels to the smallest research craft, received the same message. Operation Homecoming. All vessels return to Sol system immediately. Priority Alpha. No exceptions. Captain Lisa Hayes was 3 months into a mapping mission near the Centauri system when her communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Parker, brought her the message. Lisa had never seen a Priority Alpha order. She had heard about them in training but never thought she would see one. "Lieutenant, verify that code," Lisa ordered. "Already did, Captain. It's genuine. We're to return to Earth immediately." Lisa looked at her crew. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But the recall order was clear. Set course for Sol system. Maximum speed. Across human space, the same scene played out on dozens of ships. The cargo hauler Detroit changed course from its delivery run to Mars. The research vessel Boston abandoned its study of gas giant moons. Even the tiny scout ship Miami, exploring dead systems on the edge of human space, turned around and headed home. But the most important ships that received the recall were the ones the Galactic Council had never seen. These ships had been built in secret, hidden in asteroid bases and dark nebulae where alien sensors couldn't find them. Colonel Amy Foster commanded one of these ships, the stealth destroyer Phoenix. She had been on patrol in empty space for 5 years, watching and waiting. Her ship was invisible to most sensors, armed with weapons that could crack planets open. "Colonel, we're receiving the homecoming codes," her first officer, Major Dan Cooper, reported. Amy smiled grimly. "It's about time. Set course for Sol. Tell the crew it's what we've been training for." The Phoenix wasn't alone. 300 similar ships began moving toward Earth, emerging from hiding spots throughout the galaxy. These were humanity's secret weapons, built for wars that might never come against enemies that might not exist. On Earth, Morrison activated the wartime protocols that had been gathering dust for decades. The Luna shipyards, which built peaceful cargo ships, switched to military production overnight. The Mars industrial complex began churning out weapons and ammunition. Asteroid mining operations redirected their equipment to harvest rare metals needed for exotic weapons. Dr. Kevin Stone was pulled from his laboratory and brought to Earth's military headquarters. He was one of the few humans who understood dimensional physics well enough to fight extra-dimensional enemies. "Doctor, what can you tell us about these entities?" Morrison asked. "They exist partially outside our normal space-time," Stone explained. "That makes them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But I've been working on exotic matter warheads that might be able to disrupt their dimensional matrices." "Might be able to?" General Foster asked. "We've never tested them in combat. They work in theory, but fighting extra-dimensional entities isn't exactly something we can practice." Morrison nodded. "How many of these weapons can you make?" "With the industrial complex on Mars? Maybe 500 warheads in a week." "Do it." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was starting to notice something strange. Their long-range sensors were detecting unusual ship movements throughout human space. Counselor Zenthari, a tall alien with 4 arms and silver skin, brought the readings to Admiral Thesakar of the Velkari Empire. "Admiral, we're seeing organized ship movements in human territory. They appear to be converging on their home system." Admiral Thesakar, a proud alien who looked like a giant lizard wearing military decorations, barely glanced at the reports. "How many ships, Counselor?" "The readings suggest several hundred vessels, sir." "Impossible. Humans barely have 24 ships in their entire fleet. Your sensors must be malfunctioning," but Zenthari wasn't convinced. He had studied humans more than most council members. They were unpredictable and seemed to plan for problems that might never happen. "Sir, what if we've underestimated their capabilities?" "Counselor, humans have been in space for less than 200 years. We've been traveling the stars for thousands. Even if they have more ships than we thought, what could a primitive species do against threats that have destroyed entire civilizations?" As the days passed, more ships arrived at Earth. The space around Sol system became crowded with vessels of all sizes. Some were familiar exploration and cargo ships. Others were massive warships that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Enterprise, watching the fleet assemble. In his 40 years of service, he had never seen so many human ships in one place. The sight filled him with pride and terror in equal measure. Captain Rick Barnes, who had been rescued from a previous alien attack, approached Morrison. "Admiral, the fleet is almost ready. 800 ships fully armed and equipped." Morrison nodded. "Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we're reclaiming our territory and any interference will be met with appropriate force." As Morrison's message traveled through space toward the council chambers, the human fleet prepared to face an enemy that shouldn't exist, using weapons that redefined what was possible. The human fleet that assembled around Earth was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships kept arriving from impossible directions, emerging from asteroid fields and empty space where no vessels should have been hiding. Admiral Morrison watched from the Enterprise as his secret became visible for the first time in decades. Colonel Amy Foster brought her stealth destroyer Phoenix out of hiding after 5 years in the darkness between stars. Her ship was one of 300 identical vessels that had been patrolling the edges of human space, invisible and unknown. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "It feels strange to be visible again," her weapons officer, Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, said as they approached the main fleet. "Get used to it," Amy replied. "After today, the whole galaxy will know we exist." Captain Lisa Hayes watched from her bridge as ship after ship appeared on her sensors. She commanded the Atlanta, a ship she had thought was just for exploration. But as they approached Earth, her crew was amazed to see weapons ports opening on ships they had believed were peaceful cargo haulers. "Captain, are those plasma cannons on the Denver?" her science officer asked. "Looks like it. Seems we weren't the only ones with secrets." The truth was that every human ship had been built with hidden capabilities. The cargo haulers could deploy fighter squadrons. The research vessels carried experimental weapons. Even the smallest scout ships had stealth systems and quantum torpedoes. Admiral Morrison called a meeting of all fleet commanders aboard the Enterprise. The main briefing room was packed with captains and colonels who had never seen each other before. Many were surprised to learn that other ships even existed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison began, "for 50 years humanity has been preparing for this day. While our alien friends thought we were peaceful explorers, we were building the most advanced military force in the galaxy." Captain Rick Barnes, now commanding the heavy cruiser Chicago, raised his hand. "Admiral, why all the secrecy? Why not tell the Galactic Council what we were doing?" Morrison smiled grimly. "Because they would have tried to stop us. Every other species in the galaxy believes that young civilizations should focus on trade and peaceful exploration. They think military preparation is a sign of dangerous aggression." Dr. Kevin Stone stepped forward to explain the scientific situation. "The entities on Kepler 442b exist partially outside our normal spacetime. They can phase in and out of our dimension at will. Conventional weapons pass right through them when they're not fully materialized. So how do we fight them?" asked Colonel Dan Cooper from the stealth frigate Boston. "With these," Stone said, activating a holographic display. "Exotic matter warheads. They disrupt dimensional boundaries and force extra-dimensional entities back into normal space, where they become vulnerable." Captain Amy Foster studied the weapon specifications. "How do we know they'll work?" "We don't," Stone admitted. "But the theory is sound and they're our best option." Morrison brought up a tactical display of the Kepler 442b system. "Intelligence from our automated sensors shows that the entities are using Dr. Martinez's research station as an anchor point. They're trying to establish a permanent foothold in our dimension." "What happens if they succeed?" asked Captain Lisa Hayes. "They spread throughout the galaxy. Every inhabited world becomes a target. This isn't just about saving our people anymore. It's about stopping an invasion that could destroy all intelligent life." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just monsters threatening one human colony. They were a threat to everything. Morrison continued the briefing. "The plan is simple. We jump into the system, eliminate the entities, and rescue our people. But I want everyone to understand something. The Galactic Council has written off our colony as lost. They think this threat is beyond anyone's ability to handle." "They're about to learn otherwise," Amy said quietly. "That's right. When we succeed, the galaxy will know that humans don't abandon our own. We don't accept impossible odds. We prepare for them." As the fleet commanders returned to their ships, Morrison received a priority message from Earth's Intelligence Division. Agent Jennifer Wells had been monitoring Galactic Council communications and had disturbing news. "Admiral, the aliens are tracking our fleet movements. They can't believe the number of ships we have. Some of them are starting to panic." "Good," Morrison replied. "Let them worry. What about our target system?" "The entities have completely overrun the research station. But Admiral, there's something else. Our deep space sensors are detecting similar energy signatures in 3 other systems. I think these things are spreading." Morrison felt his stomach drop. If the entities were already spreading to other systems, the threat was even bigger than they had thought. "Keep monitoring. And Jennifer, make sure our quantum communication arrays are ready. We might need to send warnings to other species." The next day, Admiral Morrison sent a message that traveled to every government in the galaxy. It was short and to the point. "The Galactic Council has failed to respond to the crisis at Kepler 442b. Humanity is taking action to protect our citizens and contain the extra-dimensional threat. Any interference with our operations will be considered an act of war." Councillor Zenthari read the message in the council chambers and felt a chill run down his spine. Humans were threatening the entire Galactic Council. Either they were insane, or they had capabilities that no one had suspected. Admiral Thessalcar was furious. "How dare these primitives threaten us? We should send a fleet to remind them of their place in the galaxy." "Sir," Zenthari said carefully, "our sensors show they have nearly 800 ships converging on the target system. Where did they get so many vessels? Impossible. You must be misreading the data." But privately, Thessalcar was worried. If humans really had that many ships, it meant they had been lying to the Council for decades. And if they were willing to lie about their fleet size, what else were they hiding? On the Enterprise, Admiral Morrison received the final fleet status reports. 800 ships, armed with exotic weapons that most of the galaxy thought were impossible. 300 stealth vessels that could appear and disappear at will. Fighter squadrons that could swarm enemy targets faster than conventional sensors could track. Dr. Stone had worked around the clock to modify human weapons for dimensional warfare. plasma cannons that could hurt entities existing partially outside normal space, missile systems that could track targets across multiple dimensions, shield systems that could protect against attacks that came from directions that didn't exist. Captain Rick Barnes contacted Morrison from the Chicago. "Admiral, the fleet is ready. Every ship is loaded with exotic matter warheads and equipped with dimensional combat systems." Morrison looked out at the massive fleet surrounding Earth. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for threats that other species thought were fantasy. They had built weapons for enemies they had never met, and trained for battles that might never come. Now it was time to find out if their preparation had been enough. "Signal the fleet," Morrison ordered. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump to Kepler 442b. It's time to bring our people home." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Kepler 442b like an avalanche of metal and fire. 800 ships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons already charging and their sensors sweeping the system for targets. The sight was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Enterprise, watching as his fleet deployed according to plans they had practiced for decades. "All ships begin scanning for dimensional anomalies. Weapons free on any entity signatures." Captain Lisa Hayes led the first assault wave from the Atlanta. Her ship had been retrofitted with experimental phase cannons that could hurt creatures existing between dimensions. As she approached the research station, her sensors lit up with contacts that barely showed up as solid matter. "Contact. Multiple entity signatures around the station," her weapons officer reported. "All ships, this is Atlanta. Beginning attack run. Stay close and watch your dimensional readings." The crystalline entities were massive, some the size of buildings, others as big as starships. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, appearing and disappearing, shifting between dimensions like ghosts. But the human weapons had been designed for exactly this kind of enemy. Lisa's phase cannons fired, sending beams of exotic energy that followed the entities even when they tried to phase out of normal space. The first creature she hit let out a sound like reality tearing apart, then collapsed into a pile of crystal fragments that fell to the planet's surface. "Direct hit. The weapons work," Lisa shouted over the communication channel. Colonel Amy Foster brought the Phoenix in from a different angle, her stealth destroyer appearing out of nowhere to ambush a group of entities trying to flank the main attack. Her exotic matter torpedoes punched through dimensional barriers like they were made of paper. "Phoenix to all ships. These things don't like our new toys. Keep hitting them with dimensional disruptors." The battle spread across the entire system as more entities revealed themselves. They had been hiding throughout the asteroid belt and even inside the planet's moons, waiting for the right moment to strike. But human sensors designed to track dimensional anomalies found them everywhere. Captain Rick Barnes commanded the Chicago in the main battle line, coordinating fire from 20 heavy cruisers. Their quantum cannons created stable firing solutions even when the entities phased in and out of normal space. "All heavy units. Focus fire on the largest entities. Don't let them combine into bigger formations." The entities fought back with weapons that twisted space itself. Beams of energy came from directions that shouldn't exist, striking ships from angles that made no sense. But human ships had been built to survive dimensional attacks, with shields that could protect against forces from multiple realities at once. Dr. Kevin Stone monitored the battle from the Enterprise, analyzing entity behavior and adjusting weapon frequencies in real time. "Admiral, these creatures are more intelligent than we thought. They're adapting to our weapons." "How fast?" Morrison asked. "Each one that survives an attack becomes harder to hurt. We need to end this quickly." Morrison opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Morrison. Hit them hard and fast. Don't give them time to adapt. Remember, our people are counting on us." The human fleet fought like they had trained for this exact battle because they had. For 50 years, Earth's military had run simulations of dimensional warfare, practiced fighting enemies that could exist in multiple realities at once, and developed tactics for battles that other species thought were impossible. The Felkari monitoring station at the edge of the system watched in amazement as humans systematically destroyed creatures that had been classified as invulnerable. Admiral Thesakar stared at the battle reports in disbelief. "How are they doing this? These entities destroyed 3 Velkari battle groups last year." "Sir," his aide reported, "the humans appear to have weapons specifically designed for dimensional warfare. Their tactics suggest they've been preparing for this type of enemy for decades." Meanwhile, On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Martinez and her 43 survivors huddled in their quantum-shielded safe room, listening to the sounds of battle overhead. The entities that had been hunting them for days were being called away to fight the human fleet. "Elena, do you hear that?" Dr. Lisa Hayes asked. "Those are human weapons. Someone came for us." Elena activated her emergency beacon, sending their location to any human ships in range. Within minutes, she received a response from Commander Ben Parker aboard the rescue ship Dallas. "Dr. Martinez, this is Commander Parker. We're coming to get you. Stay put and keep that quantum shield running." The Dallas was a specialized rescue vessel, equipped with dimensional stabilizers that could protect against entity attacks. Commander Parker led a team of Marines in power armor designed for fighting creatures that could phase through normal matter. The rescue team fought their way through the research station, using exotic weapons to clear out entities that had been hunting the survivors. The creatures tried to phase through walls to escape, but human weapons followed them into whatever dimension they fled to. "Safe room located," reported Sergeant Mike Foster. "All survivors accounted for." Elena Martinez stepped out of the safe room for the first time in a week and saw something that brought tears to her eyes. Human soldiers armed with weapons that could hurt the entities standing guard while medics checked on her people. "Commander Parker, how did you know how to fight these things?" Elena asked. "Ma'am, Earth's been preparing for dimensional threats for 50 years. We just never thought we'd actually need to use what we learned." As the survivors were evacuated to safety, the space battle reached its climax. The largest entity, something the size of a space station, emerged from the planet's core where it had been hiding. This creature was different from the others, more solid, more present in normal reality. "That's their anchor," Dr. Stone realized. "It's what's allowing the others to exist in our dimension. If we destroy it, the rest should be pulled back to wherever they came from." Admiral Morrison made the call. "All ships target the large entity. Everything we have." The entire human fleet focused their fire on the massive creature. Exotic matter warheads, dimensional disruptors, quantum cannons, and phase torpedoes all struck at the same time. The entity tried to phase out of normal space, but human weapons followed it into every dimension it fled to. The creature let out a sound that could be heard across multiple realities, then began to collapse. As it died, the other entities throughout the system started to fade away, pulled back to whatever dimension they had come from. "All entity signatures are disappearing," Captain Lisa Hayes reported. "The system is clear." But the most important moment came when Admiral Morrison's message reached every government in the galaxy. "The Kepler 442b incident has been resolved. Human casualties were minimal. The system is now under human protection." The implications hit the alien governments like a shockwave. Humans had deployed nearly 1,000 ships without anyone knowing they existed. They had weapons that worked on principles other species couldn't understand. They had solved a crisis that the Galactic Council had written off as impossible. More importantly, they had done it all without asking for help or permission. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans faced an impossible threat, they didn't run or surrender. They came prepared for war. The last crystalline entity died under the combined fire of 16 human ships, their exotic matter warheads converting portions of its dimensional matrix back to normal space where it could be destroyed. Captain Amy Foster's Phoenix delivered the killing blow, a weapon that burned the creature out of 3 dimensions at once. "Target eliminated," Amy reported calmly, as if she destroyed extra-dimensional monsters every day. "System is clear of entity signatures." Admiral Morrison surveyed the battlefield from the Enterprise. Where hours before there had been creatures that could barely be seen or touched, now there was only empty space and crystal fragments falling toward the planet like strange snow. "All ships secure the system. Medical teams to the surface for survivor evacuation. Science teams, I want full analysis of those crystal fragments. We need to understand what we just fought." Dr. Elena Martinez stood on the bridge of the rescue ship Dallas, watching her research station through the view screen. The building was damaged but still standing. More importantly, she and all 43 of her people were alive, rescued by humans who had crossed the galaxy to save them. "Elena, take a look at this," Dr. Kevin Stone said, showing her a data pad with analysis of the entity remains. These creatures weren't just from another dimension. They were scouts. "The real invasion force is still out there." Elena felt her blood run cold. "How do you know?" "The crystal formations on your planet were communication devices. They were sending information somewhere else, probably reporting on local defenses and population centers. Admiral Morrison joined the conversation via video link. "Doctor, are you saying there are more of these things coming?" "Yes, sir. And based on the data transmission patterns, they were targeting the galaxy's major population centers. Earth, the Velkari homeworld, the Threnodi capital. Anywhere with billions of inhabitants." Morrison was quiet for a moment, then nodded grimly. "Then we need to prepare the galaxy for war." The political consequences of the human victory were immediate and enormous. Within hours, every major government received detailed reports of the battle. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as the reality of human capabilities became clear. Councillor Zenthari was the first to speak. "Fellow councillors, we must face the truth. We have been catastrophically wrong about human military capabilities." Admiral Thesakar of the Velkari Empire sat in stunned silence. His intelligence reports had estimated human fleet strength at maybe 30 ships. The battle recordings showed nearly 800 vessels using weapons technology that his best scientists couldn't understand. "How is this possible?" asked Councillor Veltar of the Threnodi Federation. "They've been in space for less than 2 centuries. "Because," Zenthari replied, "while we focused on trade and peaceful expansion, they were preparing for threats we didn't believe existed. They spent 50 years building weapons for enemies they had never met." The Sea Council voted unanimously to reclassify humanity from emerging species to major galactic power. Admiral Thesakar's objection was noted for the record, then ignored by everyone present. But the real terror spreading through alien capitals wasn't about human weapons or ships. It was about human psychology. Every other species, when faced with an impossible crisis, had either fled or accepted extinction. Humans had looked at theoretical threats and spent decades preparing for them. Dr. Elena Martinez met with Admiral Morrison aboard the Enterprise to discuss her findings about the entities. Her research team had been studying the creatures for months before the attack, and they had learned disturbing things. "Admiral, these entities can travel between dimensions at will. They're not bound by normal space-time limitations. That means they could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning." "What do they want?" Morrison asked. "Based on their behavior, I think they're trying to take over our dimension. They need anchor points in normal space to establish a foothold. Once they have enough anchors, they can bring through their entire invasion force." Morrison studied the tactical reports from the battle. How many anchor points would they need? For a galaxy-wide invasion? Maybe a dozen major population centers. Morrison activated his secure communication system and connected with Earth's leadership. President Sarah Williams listened to his report with growing concern. "Mr. President, we need to warn the other species and help them prepare defenses. These entities are a threat to all intelligent life." "Admiral, do you think the aliens will accept our help? After today, they might see us as a bigger threat than the entities." Morrison thought about that. "Ma'am, I think they're smart enough to recognize a common enemy when they see one." He was right. Within days, requests for assistance began arriving from across the galaxy. The Velkari Empire, despite their pride, asked for information about dimensional warfare techniques. The Threnodi Federation requested technical specifications for exotic matter weapons. Even smaller species that had never contacted humans before sent messages asking for protection. Captain Lisa Hayes was assigned to lead the first joint human-alien task force, working with Velkari and Threnodi officers to develop galaxy-wide defenses against dimensional incursions. It was strange working with aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive just days before. "Captain Hayes," said Commander Thekvar, a Velkari officer, "your species has redefined what we thought was possible. We would be honored to learn from your experience." Lisa smiled. "Commander, 3 days ago your people were ready to let us die rather than risk one ship. Now you want to learn from us?" "Yes," Thekvar replied simply. "Because you succeeded where we would have failed. You prepared for threats we ignored. That makes you the experts." The galaxy began to change rapidly as human knowledge spread. Shipyards that had built conventional vessels for thousands of years retooled to produce dimensional warfare equipment. Scientists who had dismissed exotic matter research as impossible began studying human technical manuals. But the most important change was psychological. Species that had lived in comfortable stability for millennia began to understand that the universe contained threats they had never imagined. The humans had shown them that sometimes the paranoid species was the one that survived. Dr. Kevin Stone established the Galactic Dimensional Defense Institute, teaching alien scientists how to detect and fight extra-dimensional threats. His first class included students from 20 different species, all eager to learn techniques that might save their worlds. The key principle, Stone explained to his mixed audience of humans and aliens, is that you can't fight extra-dimensional entities with conventional thinking. You have to accept that the impossible is possible, then prepare for it anyway. 6 months after the battle, Admiral Morrison received a message that proved Elena Martinez had been right about the invasion. Deep space sensors detected massive dimensional disturbances near the galactic core. The real enemy force was finally moving. But this time, the galaxy was ready. Human-designed weapons equipped alien fleets, joint task forces trained in dimensional combat techniques. Early warning systems watched for entity signatures across thousands of systems. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy had learned that when humanity responded to a crisis, they came prepared for war against things that shouldn't exist, using weapons that redefined what was possible. And as the real invasion began, every species in the galaxy was grateful that someone had been paranoid enough to prepare for the impossible.